Sponsored by JMR Rentals, professional digital cinema and broadcast rentals in Brooklyn, New York. To find out more, visit their website, jmrny.com. Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend. I'm Jason Godbey, and today we're bringing you our preview of some upcoming film festivals. Later on, we're going to be talking about the films at the Greenpoint Film Festival, which is coming up here on August 1st in Brooklyn. But first, we got to talk about the Katra Film Series. They're coming up here on August 10th through the 15th for their summer series. They'll be partnering once again with the folks at Footprint Channel. Going virtual, the winners there will be receiving over $5,000 in prizes from companies like JMR Rentals, Final Draft, Meditative Writing, International Screenwriting Association, Screenblade, and 3636 Studios. The films in this season will be delving into the depths of human nature, expressing it through humor, isolation, and adventure, celebrating a diverse group of filmmakers. This program will enjoy over 70% female leads, minority groups, and female filmmakers, which is great. Now, recently, I've been moderating some talks and webinars for Katra, and you can find those on their YouTube and Facebook page. Great stuff there. You should definitely check it out. Then next up, we've got NYC Web Fest. Do you have a digital series? Well, NYC Web Fest will be returning this year, and submissions start on August 1st and will be open the entire month of August. The Web Festival will be opening this year, running from November 13th through the 15th. The official selections will be selected in October. They're going virtual as well, but they have not announced the platform yet, but we'll be in touch with them and try to keep you posted on that. For more, you can definitely visit their website at nycwebfest.com. The festival founder, Lauren Atkins, has been featured here on the show. She recently appeared to help us cover the We Are One, a global film festival. And to check out more of Lauren and NYC Web Fest, check out episode 512 of the show. She gives you a rundown about what they're looking for, so it could be very helpful if you're looking to submit this year. Next up, we've got the Female Voices Rock Film Festival, which will be held in October. Looks like they're going to go virtual as well. The extended deadline for that is coming up here on August 17th, so if you haven't already, get your submission in. And to enter that film festival, all films are required to have 2 or more of the following in different specified creative roles. So it must be a woman director, writer, cinematographer, producer, composer, special effects artist, editor, production designer, and or lead talent. Any unproduced screenplay or TV pilot must also be written by a woman. Now, recently, I interviewed the head of that festival, the founder, Catherine Delaloy, and here's what she had to say when I talked to her about what they're looking for in a submission.
So the most important thing is that it's a film made with the female perspective, but that doesn't necessarily have to mean that a man couldn't submit, as long as like this, there has to be 3 people in power. So there has to be a producer, a director, or a screenwriter involved, and the story has to be generally, I mean, it can be anything. It can be a horror, it can be sci-fi. We're not only looking for female stories, but they have to be done in a sort of female perspective.
Can you give me kind of like some examples of films that you've had in the past, and kind of like maybe some award winners that you had last year or the year before?
So I think our programming last year was pretty strong. We had a drama section that actually upset a lot of people in the audience. And I remember a bunch of women, like older women, came up to me and they started screaming at me because they were like, oh, this is not the kind of films women should be directing. Like, that's literally what they told me. And they were all very heavy topics. There was one film called Just the Drill, which is about a school shooting. Like, great film. But again, it had some very strong topics. Then we had a couple of horror films that were very well done, but strong. And these women thought that our programming should be geared more towards, like what female films, like some people like to call them, which I don't really know what that means personally, but according to them, our programming was very strong and shocking. But I think we just want to do something and show that women can direct all sorts of films. whether it's action, horror, sci-fi. There's not a certain type of genre of film that women should direct.
So look out for Catherine's episode coming up. She's lovely. She's great. We talk about the festival, and we also talk about filmmaking in the time of COVID. It's a really interesting talk. Definitely check it out. Next up, we got the Greenpoint Film Festival. Greenpoint Film Festival set to return in its 9th year as a drive-in film festival. So this is the drive-in edition of Greenpoint. Starts on August 1st and runs through the 9th. It will be held in the parking lot on Masserole Avenue and Jewel here in Brooklyn, hosted by Broadway Stages and the Foundry LIC. The festival will showcase 8 feature films and 27 short films, each in competition. There'll be special guest speakers and social distancing gatherings, which will wholly abide by state and city health stipulations. For local film lovers who do not own cars, the festival has arranged for a row of parked stationary cars which will be cleaned in between each showing with a dedicated cleaning crew, which is great. And they'll also have food trucks by Wilson Rivas Catering, and filmmakers and celebrity guests will be also invited to participate in social distance drive-through red carpet, which should be interesting. The festival organizers have put out a statement. At a time when people are eager to connect and convene again after months of social distancing, we are excited to bring filmmakers and film lovers in Brooklyn together to showcase and celebrate their work in a safe environment and create a safe platform of opportunities. Despite the circumstances this year has brought us, and against all odds, we are ever so grateful we can still rejoice in the act of storytelling, for it is stories that shine the path to hope. And now joining me via Zoom to preview the films that will be featured at Greenpoint Film Festival, we have No Rest of the Weekend correspondent EJ Argenio and the founder of the I Actually Paid to See This blog, Mr. William Hammon. All right, welcome Bill and EJ.
How's it going?
How you doing, Jason?
So you guys got a chance to see some of the films that are going to be at Greenpoint this coming week. So Bill, we'll start with you. What was the first film that you saw?
Okay, so the first one we got here is Snatchers. This also played at the Brooklyn Film Festival a couple months ago. It was one of the ones we didn't have a chance to cover, so I'm glad we got a second look at it. It is very much a scary movie style parody of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, set in Brooklyn, revolving around the gentrified culture of food trucks. There's some solid laughs, especially like running gags about the absolute myriad number of fried pickle trucks and all the funny Simpsons sign gag-esque names that can come up for them. You get a couple of cool cameos. Comedian Dave Hill, who writes for John Oliver, among others, he has a small role in the film. New York radio personalities Wendy Rickman and Scott Shannon have cameos. And the whole thing kind of plays like a really good student film where everybody just had a blast goofing on each other and making fun of things as they went. A lot of the dialogue kind of flows along the Tarantino, Kevin Smith kind of vibe of meta commentary and fan jokes. There's a lot to enjoy, like if this is the type of movie you would watch, with your friends on like a movie night at home where you're just kind of like Mystery Science Theater, the whole thing.
All right, so that is playing on Thursday, August 6th at 10:30. And recommendation from you, it sounds like it's a lot of fun.
I mean, don't go into this thinking it's gonna be Oscar worthy, but try to have as much fun as you can tell that the crew and the cast had making it. That's the best way to go about it.
All right, so EJ, what was your first film?
I saw the documentary Chuck Berry about the father of rock and roll, Chuck Berry himself, directed by John Brewer, who has also done some documentaries on B.B. King and Nat King Cole. What I really appreciated about this film was its linear storytelling. They started at 18 years old, when Chuck Berry was 18 years old, dealt with a few of his troubles with the law, and then into him finding the love of his life, who he'd be married to for 69 years, Thanetta Berry, and he met her at 21 years old, and talked about his upbringing in St. Louis. And then they really dove into the music and how, as much of a musician he was a poet more than anything else, and how he revolutionized music because instead of just the chords and jingles, the little catchy tunes, he told an entire story from start to finish, and how it really changed the game of music. Went through a lot through his travels on the road, the kind of person he was. But what I really enjoyed was how they spent an equal time talking to his family as well as other peers within the industry. They spoke with his wife, his 4 children, even some of his grandchildren. They went through the type of person he was, how he differed from the musician we knew on the road to the person and father he was at home. Charles Berry is who he was at home. Chuck Berry is the man that was on the road. And he always was able to put a nice little divider in between those two people. It really showed the evolution of his music and how, believe it or not, the songs didn't change that much, but he evolved as an artist. The people he worked with later on, and they really dove into the film made about him in the 80s and how it led up to, it culminated with a performance in St. Louis, I believe, with Keith Richards, and how they prepared and the type of artist he was. Like I said, no aha moments, but for a documentary that told a great American story, a man whose upbringing was on American soil, and the troubles he had to overcome because of race relations, and how he didn't really let that hinder him. One of the great lines that I heard, I believe, was from his daughter during one of his jail stints. Unfortunately, he served time as a juvenile, and then served some time later on for a race-related incident, at which point he brought a 14-year-old girl that he thought was 21 to work at his club, and he crossed state lines. And there was some discussion as to whether, if he were white, he probably wouldn't have been charged with the same crime. But the line I loved was, no matter the predicament he found himself in, he'd always find himself a way out.
That plays Saturday, August 1st at 7 p.m. All right. So, Bill, what's your next film?
Okay, next up we have Locked Alone, directed by Yoonjun Yang, and basically starring Claire Sue as in a one-woman show. There are other actors who flit in and out as we go, but it's really her film from beginning to end. She plays a college student who gets this super cheap apartment in Midtown Manhattan, but the moment the door closes, she is locked in. She cannot get out. And as it turns out, the place is haunted by the ghost of a serial killer who had a fetish for young Asian women. There's a really strong Takashi Miike influence throughout the whole thing. Like I got a lot of audition vibes throughout the entire film. There's this wonderful static shot paranoia that pervades the entire thing. There are some silly elements like trying to communicate with the ghost via a homemade Ouija board, but you can put that stuff aside for just the sheer, not just terror of being isolated, but also the quite heavy elements of sexual assault that go through the whole thing. If you enjoyed this year's version of The Invisible Man with Elizabeth Moss, this is kind of up that same alley. And if that was a surprise hit, so if you were into that, this is the film that I think you would also enjoy.
That is definitely not a comedy, but it sounds like it was like a thriller, like it really held your attention.
Yeah, there's tons of red herrings throughout the entire film, and I won't give any of them away, but everything along the walls, because this is a fully furnished apartment, so everything you see on a wall or on a bookshelf or in the kitchen, you wonder what, if any, part it's going to play. Some things are referenced directly, some things aren't, but because of the immediate situation that this young woman is put in, and the way Claire Sue sells the performance, you're wondering what could go wrong where and how. You're wondering what elements will play a part, which ones don't. There's like, your mind is racing the entire way. She's trying to find her way out of this supernaturally locked apartment, and you're trying to find her way out as a viewer. That's a pretty strong point in its favor. That
sounds really cool. Would you classify it more as thriller or horror? Like, what genre would you put it in?
I would say it's more a classic thriller than horror. Like I said, there's strong Takashi Miike vibes, but it doesn't go to that more visceral torture porn type of area that he's such an expert in. In fact, a lot of the violence is implied or happens either off screen or in an obscured way. There's there's a moment where she has to unfortunately mutilate herself for a small moment, and in more gratuitous films, this would be a grotesque, graphic scene, and instead it's more the camera, her, and a mirror, and she just sells the moment. It is very much a film that's dependent on the quality of Claire Sue's performance, and she plays it to the absolute hilt.
That sounds good, man. That sounds like a good movie. That is playing at so that's Locked Alone, and that is playing on Friday at 10:30. EJ, what was your next picture?
I saw the film Go, Don't Go by director Alex Knapp, who also starred in the film alongside recognizable actress Olivia Licciardi from Orange is the New Black. He also wrote and produced the film, as did Licciardi, being a producer, that is. It's a drama set in a post-apocalyptic world, or at least what seems like a post-apocalyptic world. Knapp plays a character by the name of Adam who's stuck in a daily routine after the circumstances. He's the last man left on Earth. It follows him as he wanders about a town looking for resources and trying to find his way out. Licciardi plays his love interest named Kay, who they established she had a relationship with before the apocalypse, but as the film dives on, we see glimpses of her character and don't know whether she's alive or dead. And it plays into the whole dissension into madness, or he starts to question whether or not he's really alone. It's very interesting, and the film does wrap up in a conclusive way. So some of these questions are answered. However, it does move at a very slow pace. So it's definitely a tone setter, a film where they want you to feel Knapp's tension and the circumstances that he's going through. It's beautifully shot. They filmed it in the Hudson Valley, so some of the cinematic scenes, some of the landscape scenes of him walking through plain fields or along the highway, and there's even scenes of him killing time. He's at a local baseball field, and he has a automatic pitcher that he uses, and he hits the balls and runs around the bases. So these are beautifully shot, some magnificent drone sequences as well. But pacing-wise, it moves a little slow. He's essentially the only character. There are about 3 other characters besides Licciardi's Kay who are also in the film, and only for bit pieces. And it's really about his psyche and his demeanor and the struggles he's going through and this tension that arises when he starts to think he's not alone.
Did you find, did you get lost in it? Were you kind of in for the slow burn?
I didn't know what to expect because the movie starts out very quickly. And it starts out the night him and Kay meet, and they're at a bar, and there's some quick cut scenes in between the past and present, but you don't know which is which, and the present is in the post-apocalyptic. And I use that term loosely because this is an end-of-the-world scenario, but the word apocalypse is never mentioned, nor do you know what causes it. The environment around him, the community, if you will. It's not like it's burned down or it's in disarray in any way. It looks abandoned. It looks more like a ghost town, but it doesn't say what happens to its inhabitants, so you assume they're dead. There's even some sequences where he's hammering down some crosses in what appears to be a cemetery, though it has no one's name on it. So you can tell there's some sort of loss that he's dealing with. To answer your question, about 3 minutes in, once they really establish, there's no more quick cuts back and forth. Once they really establish what time you're in, that's when the movie really begins to slow down. I was hooked, but I also was expecting to see more along the way. I didn't expect to see a 90-minute film starring one character, or one-man show, if you will. And things get a little redundant. He had a lot on his plate as writer, director, and star, so I would have liked to have seen some aspects of the film divided up a little bit better. But once I was in for the long haul, I was committed, and I was feeling the characters' emotion.
Do you have anything you can compare it to? Is there another comparable movie you would like?
Yes, thank you for reminding me as I was rambling off there. Kind of reminds me of Z for Zachariah with Chris Pine, Margot Robbie. But yeah, it's a calm post-apocalyptic film. This isn't Mad Max. It's more Little House on the Prairie, as Z for Zachariah type, where, you know, you're an established community or established survivor looking to adjust to a new norm based on circumstances that are presented to you.
All right, so that is Go, Don't Go, and that is playing on Sunday, August 2nd at 7 p.m. Bill, what do we got for the next film?
Next one for me is Indiana, and I'm gonna spoil it right now. My favorite of the bunch. Like, out of everything I've seen, this is the one that stood out to me the most. In many ways, it's kind of a standard indie buddy film, if you will. There's no real film to compare it to, but it's the real adventure was the friends we made along the way kind of deal. When the film opens, you get these black and white interviews from actors that are playing locals in rural Indiana, talking about encounters with the supernatural, aliens, ghosts, what have you. And a part of me thought it was going to be like a combination of Reds and Nebraska that came out a few years ago. But then it comes more into a full-color, more traditional narrative. You have two main characters, Michael and Josh. They call themselves the Spirit Doctors, and they answer these ads basically for supernatural, paranormal type people, like ghost hunters, basically. And while those shows are entertaining, most right-thinking people know that they're full of crap. So for Michael, he's in this business because he has his own personal traumas with his late wife, and he believes there is something a little bit more than the mundanity of our lives that maybe could help him connect with her. Josh, on the other hand, is very much your stereotypical rural hayseed redneck who fully buys into the complete charlatan nature of these shows and thinks he can actually communicate with ghosts. And despite their almost polar opposite personalities, these guys have been lifelong friends. They bring along Josh's son, Pete. It's his weekend with his son because he's divorced. They bring him along on their latest call because he's interested. He wants to connect with his father. You know, he even buys some equipment for his birthday. Those weird, like, spectral cameras that people use on these shows that don't actually do anything, because he's invested both in the idea and in his father's value as a person. And that lends this sneaky sweetness to the whole affair. You have Michael on one side who just wants to try to keep everything low-key. He's got a respectable 9-to-5 where this is just kind of a thing he kind of keeps under the rug, whereas Josh depends entirely on it for his purpose, basically. And one side knows it's all fake, the other side clings to it, and then way off to the side, you have a murder mystery. You have Stuart Rudin playing an old man named Sam who basically pretends to be drunk and get picked up, and he kills the guy who picks him up. And it's like, well, how do these two storylines converge? And the way it does is honestly nothing short of magic, as far as just such a well-written narrative to lend it dignity, if not credibility, to their line of work, but also the catharsis of, I won't say necessarily revenge, but poetic justice, if you will. And the way all these actors play off each other is pretty amazing. Gabe Fazio and Bradford West, they play Michael and Josh respectively. There is like this rapport that really can't be faked between the two of them. And yeah, it's on the backdrop of something that is tourist trappy and utterly fake and borderline stupid, but the way they believe in each other as people is what allows this to make any semblance of sense and rope the audience in to get them engaged.
So that sounds great. Sounds really strong. That's Saturday, August 8th at 10:30 p.m. So you got to stay up a little bit late for that one.
It's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. Tony Comas, I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly, directed the film and co-wrote it. It's a solid script with really good performances behind it. And it's honestly kind of the most professional, almost the closest to Hollywood of the bunch, because they were actually able to clear music. They have LaGrange by ZZ Top playing it during one of the best scenes of the entire film.
Cool. So, I'm going to wrap up. Before I go...
Sounds great.
Where can we find you on the web?
The blog is actuallypaid.wordpress.com. We're getting closer to the theaters reopening, so content is going to be coming fast and furious once it does. And in the meantime, I'm starting to compile a whole bunch of reviews of Netflix movies and other streamable content, so we can at least get something going in the meantime. So,
excellent. And EJ, what about you? Where can we find you?
I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at the same location, at EJ Argenio. That's at EJARGENIO, EJ Argenio. That's me.
All right. Thanks a bunch, guys. Really appreciate it. So that's it for our preview of upcoming film festivals. Thanks so much for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. For more of our content, including our movie reviews, visit our website, NoRestForTheWeekendPodcast.com. Please be sure to like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. I'd like to thank JMR Rentals for sponsoring this episode. And of course, I want to thank William and EJ for joining me and giving us their insight on the films at Greenpoint. Look for more of them on the channel as well. And for Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.